I'd like to have permission for Emily Hoegler of Americans United for Life to come to speak, to offer her testimony.
Permission granted. When you come up, please state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Good morning, Chairwoman Pinckney and members of the committee. My name is Emily Hoegler. I serve as Policy Counsel for Americans United for Life, specializing in constitutional law and abortion jurisprudence. I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 252. As a legal matter, the question before this committee is not whether abortion should remain legal in Delaware, but whether the state will exercise its well-established authority to regulate the medical standard of care provided to women. SB 252 is a model of narrow tailoring, and I just want to highlight a couple reasons why, and I submitted an in-depth testimony as well in case you're interested. So first of all, under the state has the regulatory authority to enact this type of bill under the Supreme Court's holding in Dobbs, and even under previous holding in Casey and Roe. States possess a legitimate interest in protecting maternal health and preserving the integrity of the medical profession. SB 252 does not interfere with any right to abortion that a woman may have. Rather, it enforces the state's interest in ensuring that such a procedure is performed safely and ethically. By establishing clear requirements for physician-led ultrasounds, Delaware is simply codifying an evidence-based standard of care that is already recognized in at least 30 other states. This also furthers my second point, the doctrine of informed consent. Informed consent is the bedrock of medical malpractice law and bioethics. For consent to be legally valid, the patient must be competent, adequately informed, and not coerced. Currently, Delaware law contains a critical gap. By requiring providers to offer women the opportunity to view sonogram images and hear fetal heartbeats, SB 252 ensures that the consent obtained by the provider is authentically and legally robust. We are not asking for the legislator to choose for the woman. We are asking for the legislator to ensure the provider gives her the biological facts necessary to choose for herself. The third point is that this mitigates potential risks to the woman's health and coercion. So we know that ultrasounds are the only accurate way to diagnose an ectopic pregnancy, which, if left untreated, could be fatal to the woman. They're also the only accurate way to gauge gestational age. And, for example, just the risk of abortion increases exponentially by 38% each week after 8 weeks with gestational age. So it's vital that a doctor performs an ultrasound before performing an abortion to narrow out these risks and properly inform the woman of what the risks are at that stage, because they increase exponentially as the pregnancy goes along. We also have some statistics indicating that women experience at least some pressure to abort in about 70 or 60% of the cases in which they receive abortion. And so any additional informed consent that we can create, even something as small as a doctor coming in and providing an ultrasound and having that additional conversation with a woman, could protect against coercion. Finally, this bill is legally narrow and has emergency exceptions. This bill is drafted to avoid any undue burden. It applies specifically to the physician-patient relationship and includes explicit exceptions for medical emergencies. It does not create a barrier to access. It creates a floor for quality. It ensures that a woman's decision is shielded from financial duress, physical force, or medical misinformation. Protecting the right to receive relevant facts before a life-altering medical procedure is not a radical policy preference. It is a fundamental commitment to the dignity and safety of every woman in this state. SB 252 brings Delaware in line with the national medical and legal standards. I urge this committee to support SB 252 and uphold the integrity of informed consent in Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members, Senator Buxton?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Chairperson. Thank you for being here. All right. Just a couple questions. I really don't have the answer. I'm hoping maybe you do, and it's real simple. So you mentioned regulations and our authority to do so with the state. Do you know of other examples of where we might do this, not related to abortion, but just medical in general?
In terms of informed consent?
Well, no, just in forms of regulating what's required. In other words, some of the criticism is that the state's now wanting to enter the space confined to a patient, not just a female, but a patient and the doctor. And so my question to you is my hope is, right, not hope, but my expectation is that we do this in other areas of healthcare where we actually regulate the space for the benefit of the patient.
So informed consent is a medical standard for all medical procedures. It's typically regulated by some type of medical board or authority. And the reason for this, and that it's not always legislatively enumerated, is because it's typically not controversial. So with abortion, you will have often more explicit informed consent requirements in the legislative area because it's more controversial, and that's why we had things like with the Supreme Court in Casey saying that it's actually okay for the legislator to do this, to enact informed consent laws that protect the woman's right to receive informed consent in this scenario. And although we don't have that type of legislation in this same way, it's regulated by medical boards and authorities, and it's not controversial. And I guess on the flip side, patients have a right to informed consent. So, for example, even if there's not legislation that says you need to provide this explicit informed consent before an appendectomy, if that's not performed, a patient has the right to sue that doctor. So the reason that is maybe legislated a little bit differently, a little bit more explicitly in cases of abortion, is just because it's sort of a controversial area.
And that's a fair response, and I think that combines the second one, which was basically to better define what I think I know informed consent to be. Informed consent is sort of a routine procedure when you're getting a procedure done. So a medical provider, regardless of what procedure it might be, informed consent is an understanding of exactly what the expectation is, what the outcome should be, what the procedure is, all of those things. The expected funeral process. And I think that's pretty much it. All right, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you, hold on, I have a question too. Before you, Senator Perez, a question, but can you talk about how this bill is how it would be materially different from informed consent that, as you pointed out, is already in Delaware law? Professional licensure standards and all medical procedures already require informed consent, as you said. So, and to take that a step further, Delaware-specific abortion law already requires clinical judgment around whether an ultrasound is medically necessary. It's already governed by standard of care, so how would this be different from informed consent that is already in Delaware law?
So Delaware law does not explicitly require any informed consent before abortion, nor does it always require any ultrasound or sonogram to be performed.
You're saying Delaware law does not require providers to tell the patient what risks come with the procedure that they're getting?
This bill doesn't actually do that. This bill just requires an ultrasound to be performed and then the woman to be given the opportunity to see it if she would like to. At least 30 other states actually explicitly require all of the risks of carrying a child to term versus abortion and things like that to be specifically stated. So this actually does a little bit less than that. But yeah, there's currently nothing in the Delaware Code that would require that to be performed before an abortion.
Yeah, but if you're, from my understanding from what the two of you just said, the purpose of the requirement of the ultrasound would be to provide the patient with informed consent based on what they discover, figure out, or coerced in from the ultrasound. So if the intention of the ultrasound is informed consent is already implied by Delaware law.
It could be implied by existing just kind of the general standard for medical informed consent, but I think it's important to enact this special protection just to ensure that all women actually receive this informed consent and receive, for example, assurances that they're not experiencing an ectopic pregnancy before abortion, and just getting the exact gestational age to make sure that they're aware of the exact risks of abortion for their explicit age, for their gestational age at that point. So it could be implied, and a doctor could do this, and that would be great, but this is just to ensure that all doctors do that, because we want to ensure that women receive this right, or receive the medical standard of care that they have a right to. So it's sort of an additional protection to ensure that we're protecting women, even though many doctors might and hopefully do, but this would just ensure that they must.
Senator Poore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for answering our questions. I know it's not easy when you're coming up to testify and then all of a sudden there's a whole host of questions, but just so that way I can better understand, you had mentioned that 70% of the statistics are implied that there is coercion. I'm sorry, if you could just, I want to make sure that I understood that correctly.
Yeah, there's kind of varying statistics in this area, but I think I cited at least 2 or 3 studies in the written testimony that I provided that say anywhere from 60 to 70% of cases of abortion, there's at least women experience at least some perceived pressure to abort. So this doesn't always go to the case of, for example, intimate partner violence, right? We have a strong overlap between intimate partner violence and abortion. I think women who receive abortions are about 3 times more likely to have experienced intimate partner violence, but that doesn't mean that, that's the 70% of women who experience some pressure to abort. So it's anywhere from like minimal pressure, maybe a partner threatens to break up with them, maybe someone threatens to withhold financial support of them, something like that. At least minimal pressure to violence is encompassed within that 60 to 70%.
Okay, and so, all right, because I wasn't sure if it was, and my apologies for not understanding it, I wasn't sure if you were implying that it was coming from the doctor side, you're saying in general.
Yeah, in general,
Okay.
there have been cases where women have said a doctor has pressured them to abort, and a lot of times it's someone close in there, like a partner or a family member or something like that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Port. In the study that you are citing that statistic from, is there a definition for pressure?
There is. I don't recall it exactly, but I think I quoted it in the written testimony that I provided.
Okay, thank you. Do any other senators have questions for this witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Stay by, somebody might want to come back to you. We also have expert witness online, Dr. Chow, that I would like to go to now.
Could I
You're good. You can hang over there.
ask him? I had.
Oh, you want to ask questions of your witness?
Yes, please.
My apologies. 1 second, Dr. Chow, we'll come back to you.
I would like to go over, ask these questions just to reiterate some of the things that you've already addressed. Does this legislation create a legal undue burden or prevent a woman from accessing an abortion in Delaware?
No, this does not interfere with any right that a woman has to abortion in Delaware. It just enforces the woman's right to receive a certain medical standard of care in Delaware.
Okay. I've got 2 more questions. Will this bill make it harder for women experiencing medical emergencies to receive life-saving treatment?
No, so there's exceptions in this bill for when a woman is experiencing a medical emergency, and in that case, because of the time requirement, that the ultrasound requirements would be, they would not apply to those situations. So if there's a medical emergency and they don't have time to show the woman the ultrasound, I mean, they probably would perform one in the case of a medical emergency to determine what's going on, but they don't have to stop what they're doing and offer to show it to her if there's a medical emergency. So no, it would not interfere with her health in the cases of a medical emergency.
Okay, just one more. Why is an informed consent provision necessary for abortion? Are we treating abortion differently than other medical procedures by statutorily enumerating these informed consent requirements?
Yeah, I think some of the senators also kind of had questions to this effect. Yes, sometimes abortion is regulated a little bit more explicitly than other medical procedures because oftentimes the informed consent requirements are a little bit controversial because they're seen as burdens to a woman receiving abortion, but they're not. They're just ensuring that a woman is fully informed so that she can make an authentic decision of whether to receive an abortion or not. And in the case of this bill particularly, as I stated before, ultrasounds are very important to protect a woman's physical health and safety from something like an ectopic pregnancy and the exponentially increasing risks of later-term pregnancies.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. If there's any questions from any members of the Senate? And
Senator Poore.
If not?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You probably cannot answer this, but I think it's pretty clear. Our docs have to take an ethical oath. And so I know you were saying in your statement that if there's a medical emergency, they're performing an ultrasound. I know personally, having 3 children, any ultrasounds that were performed, I could see, right? Like the screen is there. They can turn the screen for the most part, or it's as you're laying there and you're getting ultrasounds. I think we see even in social media the amount of people having babies in ultrasounds that you can actually see it. So I know that the bill says that you don't have to see the ultrasound, but I guess I will be interested in knowing whether or not if you're having this, if you are in the doctor's office or you're in the hospital, that they're not performing the ultrasound. They are before they're going to do a medical procedure or even approve a medical procedure.
Just to clarify, your question is, are there cases in which an abortion is performed without an ultrasound?
I will, yes.
If that's not your question.
That's okay. No,
sorry.
go ahead.
So there's not exactly statistics on this that I could cite. I only really have anecdotes. So from traveling across the country, working with different people who work at pregnancy centers, for example, they oftentimes have women come in and say, I was never offered to see an ultrasound. So we at least have their testimony. And I know for a fact that in cases of chemical abortion, because of the ability to mail chemical abortion, there's no way for a woman there's no way to ensure that a woman receives an ultrasound before receiving chemical abortion, which now accounts for about 60% of abortions in America. So those are, the majority of abortions, there's not an explicit requirement to ensure that a woman has received an ultrasound first at all, like regardless of whether she's offered to look at that image. And that's particularly dangerous in cases of chemical abortion because the symptoms of just experiencing a normal chemical abortion overlap with the symptoms of experiencing a potentially deadly ectopic pregnancy. So you have to have that ultrasound first, make sure you don't have an ectopic pregnancy, to just make sure that you're even eligible to receive the abortion pill and that it won't harm you and that it will just provide an abortion.
Sure, but wouldn't it be for the doctor under the ethical oath that if someone is experiencing that, they're going to do an ultrasound? They're not going to just skip that piece of it if it's an ectopic pregnancy, if they're not even sure.
So an ultrasound is the only way of diagnosing an ectopic pregnancy. So a woman could just order, have a telehealth appointment, order the chemical abortion from a doctor, and there would never be an ultrasound performed if she wasn't experiencing any symptoms before she took the pill, which is often the case. It kind of comes pretty quickly.
Okay.
So in those cases, when you have chemical abortion and things like that, I can at least cite to, there's no requirement there for an ultrasound. And I've heard anecdotes about in-person procedures, but I don't have any statistics on that.
Okay. And do you have any statistics on Delaware?
No, I don't. In terms of who receives an ultrasound?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was not able to find that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Senator Richardson?
I do have one other thought or one other question, I guess. It's been mentioned a couple times about the ethical standards that already exist with medical professionals. So have you seen in any states where, since these medical ethical standards apply, why would it be necessary? First of all, why would it be necessary to have this additional step? But I guess my main question is, why would medical professionals oppose just codifying something that they already should be doing? I guess that's the real question. I'm
not exactly sure I could answer that question. I think sometimes when, I could testify to the legal side. I'm not exactly a medical expert, but when we get to healthcare professionals talking about abortion, I think there's a lot of fear that they're going to overstep on a woman's right in some way. So they tend to err on the side of not doing anything. Like, we don't want to do this informed consent requirement because maybe we'll step on her right to abortion, and I don't want to get in trouble for that. So I think it could sometimes come from a place of fear or a misunderstanding, a belief that informed consent actually makes abortion less accessible to women, and it just makes women's health care more accessible. We want to empower her with information and the facts about her medical health so that she can make an informed decision and decide what she would like to do based on her health and her conversations with her doctors.
Okay. No other questions. I ask that the witness be excused. Thank you.
The witness is excused. Thank you so much.
Thank you.